All right. Let's wrap this up. This will be part 3.
Do you hate shaving? We used to hate shaving too. Razor burn, irritation.
I'm not going to put you through this.
So how you think about the Dominion case, having written so much about, written a book about the Seth Rich case. Like, I was thinking that Fox, and I've talked to some legal experts about this, that Fox will settle. When one reason they'll settle is not just because they think they're going to lose in court, but because if it goes to trial, like all of these hosts are going to be under oath and have to tell the truth that we have already seen in all of their text messages. And that seems like it would be most damaging to Fox.
Right. I mean, what we're seeing in the Dominion documents are emails, texts, contemporaneous messages, which are on their own, I think, incredibly damning. And not only show that they knew they were airing, not only show that they were airing false information, but that they knew that it was false. They knew that it was dodgy. They knew they were putting on air someone who said that the wind talks to her. Sidney Powell got that information. Sidney Powell was going on air and she got information from a source. We don't know the name of the source, again, who said, I was internally decapitated as a youth. The wind talks to me. Even the source said the things she was claiming about Dominion that went to Sidney Powell that then went on Fox were, quote, pretty wackadoodle. Imagine all of these people, Sidney Powell, Sean Hannity, Suzanne Scott, the CEO, going up on the stand and being questioned under oath. I mean,
yeah, but that's exactly why Dominion is probably going to push it all the way to court, because they know that whatever they get offered in a settlement isn't going to be nearly what they will get in court, and they'll be able to absolutely destroy Fox News by making all of those people testify.
We don't know what's in all the depositions. We know what was in Rupert Murdoch's and excerpts, and that was pretty damning. Do they want everyone at Fox to do that? I don't imagine that they do. I mean, seeing all this stuff play out is, again, I feel like I saw a tiny bit of it doing the Seth Rich story, and I learned things about how Fox operates that now are being borne out in, wild living color. I mean, I was told by a lot of people at Fox that, the different big shows kind of operate independently. They're like loosely confederated. Sean Hannity and his producers call the shots. Tucker, they call their shots. There's not a lot of like vetting, coherence. Hannity kind of does what Hannity wants to do unless they really come down hard on him. And you see that now playing out with the Dominion evidence because you see Maria Bartiromo having Sidney Powell on, and then people elsewhere at Fox going, why are we doing this? We have to stop doing this. You'd think Fox would be more organized than that, but apparently not.
Yeah, it is sort of what you would expect watching some of these people. You're like, Maria Bartiromo, she seems nuts. She seems like she's lost it. And then you're like, oh yeah, that's clearly how she was behind the scenes as well. And you're like, Tucker Carlson, he seems like he's conniving and strategic about, that's exactly what he is. You spent a lot of time in the darkest corners of the internet while writing this book. What was that like?
Oh, it was
Probably a lot of
taxing. It was hard. I would do a lot of this work at night. Like I would do my day job, and then I would, my wife and I would have dinner or watch a television show, and she'd go to bed, and I'd spend another 3 hours trolling through 4chan, 8chan, the Donald, Twitter threads, whatever. And I would not recommend that to even my worst enemies. There were a lot of times, too, that I would have to, just get up from the desk and just go outside and walk around and clear my head and just, breathe real air and not think about the internet. And then, of course, I'm like, should I be walking around my neighborhood super late at night? Aren't I writing a book about a guy who was killed walking around his neighborhood super late at night? So, it was not good for my health. But it was also really instructive that when I see things happening online now, when I see some viral story catching on, when I see some conspiracy theory taking root, I can kind of see the signal in the noise. I can see how these things happen, and it helps me understand them. It helps me write about them, or some cases just ignore them if I just don't think that it matters. But don't know if I'd want to have anyone else have that same knowledge.
Well, isn't it interesting that
Well, yeah, see, I mean, this is why I stopped reading about this stuff too, because it's a very dark place to be. And it's also how it helped me identify who around me in the progressive movement was obsessed by this sort of information and propagating lies. And sometimes I think they're doing it knowingly. Sometimes I think they're just feeble-minded. But when I see people drawing conclusions, making assumptions, focusing on things that don't matter, like body shaming, or just, doing these sorts of things that are so negative, it makes it quite obvious to me that they are trapped in these conspiracy theories, and their lives must be very sad, because how can you worry about that every day and have a happy life? How can you be so hyper fixated on making assumptions about people when there is no concrete proof? I find it's sad to see people around me be angry and suspicious at all times. And I know a lot of people like that. I know some live streamers like that they're just angry and suspicious on a daily basis.
even, you're a journalist, you're doing this for research, and I've done the same thing, go down these rabbit holes, and you sort of learn the real power and pull of these conspiracy theories, because as much as you want to separate yourself from them because you're just researching it, it like draws you in a weird way. Not that it becomes compelling, but it fucks with your head, basically. Is what what you're saying. And you're like, I should know better, that it shouldn't fuck with my head. Like, I'm just reading something, I can step away. But you're like, if it's doing that to me, imagine what it's doing to someone with low social trust, who is prone to conspiracies, who's on the fringes of politics anyway, who's sitting around, and then you start realizing how these things then sort of spill from online to offline.
This to me is the big difference between conspiracy culture now and conspiracy culture pre-internet. You mentioned this earlier. There's this tendency for some to say, oh man, conspiracy theories have never been as bad as they are now, and it's all the internet's fault. And it's like, no, that's not true. Conspiracy thinking has been around for as long as human beings have had brains. We were, sitting around the campfire, and someone was, saw a shadow and thought, oh, light, flat fire, shadow, okay. And someone thought, like, there's an evil spirit who's coming in to suck our souls out.
That's so interesting that he used the exact same illustration, basically, that I have used about how conspiracy theories are like campfire stories. And pre-internet, there were shows that covered this. I mean, in the early aughts, I was watching unsealed UFO files and unsealed FBI files, or whatever it was called. And I was writing articles about it by the end of the aughts, somewhere around like 2008, 2009. Because they're like campfire stories. And so, JFK was the biggest one, right? But I think that actually recently did get proven. There have been a few that got proven, right? So JFK being killed by the CIA, I think that actually did get proven recently. And there was the chemtrails. That turned out to be a real thing. There was a few others. I can't remember them all. But some of them have turned out to be true. But there are too many of them that are not true. And they're just defamatory and they're hurtful to people.
No basis for that, but they believed it. But, what the internet has done, you said supercharged earlier. I think that's a good word for it. I would say what it's done is it has turned conspiracy thinking into a world that you can inhabit, a closed universe where every door leads to another conspiracy theory. And
Well, and that's the reason that it's gotten so much more severe in that regard is that the internet has connected people. So, for example, if you had an interest in conspiracy theories and you wanted to talk about it all the time, but your family's like, I don't believe this, I'm not there with you, you can now go online and find people who believe in the same thing as you, get your echo chamber, and hyper fixate on it at all times.
you can get the version of the conspiracy theory about any issue you care about all in the same place, because the internet is so, I mean, that's what the internet has done for us. It's a fully immersive experience. In the Clinton days, yes, there was the Clinton body count, but mostly it was like early email newsletter or whatever things, or it was five guys sitting at a bar in Little Rock, Arkansas, saying, all those state troopers, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton probably killed him. But but you're still in the world there. When you're doing this online, you can just sort of marinate in it so much more. You can live in it and never step out of it in a way that you just couldn't before the last 10 years.
Yeah, I interviewed Megan Garber of The Atlantic on this show because she had written that piece that says we're already living in the metaverse. And that is what you're talking about.
Spot on.
That you can completely inhabit that world and never... I mean, you faulted algorithms for sucking people into conspiracies, making it easier than ever to spread them. Like, we've talked a lot about that on this show. You've also written about another culprit we've covered here, which is the loneliness epidemic. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I do think that's sort of the other side of what's happening with a lot of these people who are spending a lot of time on the computer.
That was probably the most personally, I don't know if moving is the right word, but the element that I encountered on these late nights in these dark places that really sort of shook me as a person, just as a guy in the world, which was going into these Facebook groups or Reddit forums, 4chan, YouTube, whatever, watching videos, listening to people talk, and realizing that what many of these people, though not all, were finding in these places was community. They were finding like-minded people, welcoming strangers who said, come join us. You can participate if you want. You don't have to if you don't want to. You can just hang out and listen or watch or whatever. Just read along. And that part really hit me, because I just imagined that in another time, these people are spending time with family, or they're, at the VFW lodge, or they're at the Rotary, or they're at the local library. I really do think the effects of local institutions losing their place in communities can be directly connected to someone saying, I all my friends are on Facebook and they're all in this group about, how vaccines are dangerous and might kill us all, or, about Seth Rich. I mean, certainly spent time in those groups, and that is a real world cause of this that needs a real world solution, a sort of re-knitting back together, because otherwise it's so easy to go online and find people who will welcome you in, but they'll welcome you in because they want to sell you something, or they want to convince you of something that isn't true.
Yeah, and look, experts who have studied de-radicalization will say that sort of one of the more effective ways of pulling people out of these conspiracy groups, universes, is to sort of give them another community that has more sort of positive aspects to it. And I do think if we want to, one of the many solutions that will be needed to sort of combat this is giving people a choice that is also community-based, whether it's, like you said, rebuilding these institutions, or whether it's online, right? Like more productive, happier, less dangerous communities for people to go to instead.
Well, and it's also important to understand that there is no perfect group, because not everybody can get along with all personalities. So there is more than likely going to be somebody that you don't get along with in a group. But also, there are people who try and exploit those sort of situations. And so, there's never going to be a perfect scenario of this is the best group for you. But yeah, it definitely would be wiser to join groups that are pushing forward positive thinking, positive activities, something of that nature, rather than constantly harping on and hyper fixating on things that are going to cause you to be suspicious, paranoid, distrustful, make assumptions about the people around you, things of that nature. That's not going to be helpful to you, and it's going to mess with your head.
How has this book sort of changed the way you think about politics and your approach to political journalism? I know you've covered politics for a long time before this book. How has it made you rethink sort of the problems that we're facing with, trying to hold on to this democracy and all the other political issues that we're dealing with?
I'd say it's changed me in a lot of ways. Weirdly enough, before I set out to write the book, I was probably more dismissive of online culture and the way that it can spill into the real world. And I'm not that way now, obviously. Yeah. Again, I watch how these online stories sprout and spread and how they get used and misused by people on all sides of the political aisle. And, I think I just take that a lot more seriously when I think it should be taken seriously, without a doubt. I'm definitely more cynical about people's, the lines of truth and falsity and the use of disinformation to advance partisan agendas. I'm just so much more on guard for that now. I guess I should have been like this all the time, but everyone I listen to, I'm just looking for the feint. I'm looking for the sleight of hand, because I'm so skeptical that anyone is just going to put the real truth out there without fear or favor, without worrying that it's not going to be good for their side. This is the big lesson of the Fox Dominion stuff. Is Fox was terrified of alienating and losing this audience that it had conditioned over its entire existence to believe what it believed, to want to believe something like the big lie or birtherism before that. The examples are numerous. And I just everyone I listen to, everyone I write about, I'm skeptical of what the feint is, what the angle is. But also I would say too that the book renewed my faith in mankind in a few little ways, and certainly watching people like Mike, your pal, who really didn't need to take on these cases, didn't need to spend whatever it is, 4, 5, 6 years litigating these cases pro bono. He didn't need to do that, and yet he did, because he believed that this family needed to be defended, and he believed that the truth was worth fighting for, even if it wasn't a pleasant experience, even if it wasn't what he imagined himself doing as a lawyer. And, to his credit, he's still doing these cases. He's representing, Ruby and Shay, the election workers out of Atlanta. That's a massive case that just gets more and more complicated every time Donald Trump opens his mouth.
Yep.
And he hasn't shied away from this stuff. And so I do also come away with a bit of inspiration that the truth is worth fighting for, and that people can fight and can win. It just takes a long time.
Yeah. That's a good note to leave it. Andy Kroll, thank you so much for joining. The book is A Death on W Street, The Murder of Seth Rich and the Age of Conspiracy. It's a fantastic book, and all your writing and reporting is great. So thanks for coming on Offline. Appreciate it.
I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
So I don't entirely remember all the topics I said I would circle back to. So I'll watch the videos back after they're loaded and see what I can potentially add to the story. I think that basically at the end of the day, there are, it should be a huge red flag if somebody is pushing the Seth Rich conspiracy theory out to you. I think it should be a huge red flag if somebody is taking what Julian Assange has tweeted at face value. The dumps are not altered. Those have been authenticated, as far as I know. The leaks are unaltered, as far as I know. But the way he contextualizes things is dishonest. And so that's why it's hard for me to feel really bad about his situation right now, because he did purposely try and alter the election results. He did have a vendetta against Hillary Clinton. She became a pretty easy target for many, many reasons. I mean, not only her political career, her corporate involvement, her relationship with Bill Clinton, her attacking her victims, not her victims, Bill's victims in that situation. I mean, there were a lot of reasons why Hillary was not going to be the first female president. But that being said, America did choose Donald Trump over her, which is pretty shocking considering that he is far worse than Hillary was. Far worse. So that was a terrible election season for us, with all the misinformation we were getting. And it ended up being pretty bad. And I will never fall for the vote third party scenario ever again, now that I know how bad it can get.